So today we'll take a look at the pair of bookshelf speakers made by a mysterious half European and half Chinese brand, Taga Harmony. This is already their third generation of the Platinum B40 and it costs about 350 to 400 bucks. Without further ado, let's see how it performs against competition from more well-known brands. Honestly, the design appears to be quite interesting since it combines many solutions used individually by other manufacturers. Here we find the same type of curved cabinet used for example in Wavdells, partially isolated tweeter housing and fancy looking waveguides like that in the Bowers & Wilkins, and also as you can see all the driver membranes are made from metal, just like you would find in the monitor audio. This distinctive approach of combining many different technologies deserves at least recognition. All of that looks definitely impressive, and I have to admit as the result we deal with a nice and unique external design overall. However, when you look closer, it slightly falls behind today's competition, especially looking at the finer details. Look, nowadays with budget speakers such as Wavdell Diamond 12.2, the bar is set really high. What do I mean? Well, for example, since we've got beautiful aluminum tweeter, why it's so covered? And another thing, there are just too many bolts visible on the front and back, which could be easily hidden. Oh, and the cheap sticker on the back, why not replace it with something nicer? Anyway, all of this is not the end of the world. My point is just that attention to detail is slightly lacking here. The build quality itself is not bad, the fit and finish is generally respectable, aside from few plastic parts that feel a bit too gimmicky here and there. In my case, the speakers were equipped with the black ash vinyl, so I cannot really elaborate on its looks, though the quality feels pretty good. However, the cabinet damping could need some more improvements because it appears to sound really empty from the sides. And the quality control seems a little suspicious because, for example, already upon the unboxing I found some minor scratches on the tweeter housings. But let's move to the most important, the sonic performance. In short words, this speaker sounds like metal. Okay, but seriously, the sound signature is forward, bright and airy, though in a bit of flashy and artificial way, in exchange for some pollution in the era of high frequencies. The closest thing I would compare it to would be the Monitor Audio Bronze 2, although I imagine they would be still quite different in direct comparison, especially by the hi-fi standards. The strongest point of the Platinum B40 lays in its fantastic dispersion and good off-axis performance, which I think is at least in part thanks to that unique tweeter assembly that features a clever waveguide design. As the result, this brings air and spaciousness to the sound, which also makes them especially advantageous in a difficult room setting. These speakers provide with a good amount of details, though in exchange of sacrifice in neutrality. The high frequencies sound a bit like you would expect from a cheap speaker, I mean even cheaper than its price suggests, meaning they are overemphasized a lot, and I would say I felt like I could always hear some kind of pink noise in the background. But interestingly, in opposite to some other slightly harsh sounding speakers, I don't remember my ears to be irritated by them. Either I got used to some extra sparkle in the treble over time, or boosted frequencies were more luckily chosen and combined in this case. If we look at the measurements I've done in my room, comparing them to my reference Quadral speakers, I think you get the idea of what I was talking about. There are certainly few peaks in the higher frequencies, the main one between 2 and 4 kHz, but also even at 13 kHz you can notice a substantial peak. Maybe that is why and where I hear that pink noise mentioned earlier. I also want you to look at the mid-range area because the last two speakers I've tested had a significant dip in here, but with this one it's slightly of the opposite. There seems to be some boost in form of elevation in the 900 to 1400 Hz and also at the 1.8 to 2.5 kHz. And frankly, I could hear it almost immediately after first few minutes of listening. I even put my ear closer to the woofer and thought to myself, it sounded almost like a big tweeter. Of course, I am exaggerating a bit, but you get my point. I like the mid-range here, and this aspect alone I consider better than in, for example, Wavdale Diamond 12.2s. The mids are bright, shiny and metallic, which I think makes the speaker unique and quite appealing in a way, if only the higher frequencies were more tamed to balance it all out. Surprisingly, the bass was not as hard as I expected from a such rigid membrane. Its characteristics were respectable, maybe even a bit better in comparison to the mentioned Monitor Audio Bronze 2, if I remember that one totally correctly. That said, in my opinion, this speaker lacks a bit of weight and punch, so the amount of bass is just slightly lacking here. I have to say rivals such as ELAC WB6.2 or Wavdale Diamond 12.2 offer probably a bit more in this regard. Due to very good dispersion of the tweeter and slight coloration in the mid-range, you can expect to get a pretty good soundstage, at least in some terms. Indeed, the scene is pumped up with sparks and air, though to be expected, it lacks a bit of depth and weight that I praised, for example, in mentioned Wavdales. In conclusion, look, I don't expect perfection at this price point. Speaker in this class will always have something to improve, even while we look at more well-known rivals such as Wavdale Diamond 12.2 with harshness and lacks in the mid-range, or Q Acoustics 3030i that's lacking in the soundstage. And I think Taga proved to have a lot of potential to make good speakers. This one though, because of that lack of control in the upper frequencies, just slightly crosses the line between hi-fi sound and cheap home theater-like sound. So I am put in kind of difficult position today. On one hand, the Platinum B40 provides with great dispersion and color for mid-range, on the other the bass is a bit uninspiring and more importantly, the highs. Okay, there is a decent amount of detail, but like I said, the speaker just crosses the line a bit with that weird kind of pink noise or sibilance in the background. Honestly, if that alone was improved, I would easily recommend this speaker over a few of the mentioned rivals. But as it is, the Taga Platinum B40 version 3 receives 3.5 stars. I've also seen that Taga has one even a bit higher bookshelf speaker model in its range, the Diamond B60, and I'm actually quite curious about that one. So who knows, maybe I will try to get it next. But that would be all for this video. Let me know your opinion about the speaker in the comments and stay tuned to the M-Audiophile for more trustworthy hi-fi reviews in the future. See you in the next one. Peace.